Happy Monday. Welcome to Send It In, presented by BetMGM here on the BetQL network. I'm your host, PJ Glasser. Great show for you guys on tap today. We're talking NFL playoffs. We got 3 of the divisional round matchups set. We'll dive into that. Also, our first look into the national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame. We'll give some initial thoughts on that as well. We got one more game from Wild Card Weekend, Rams and Vikings. We'll preview that here in moments. Lucy Burdge going to join us later on in the show for Model Making Money. And then it is a Monday. We got college hoops going on. We had a great Saturday slate. And with the Janai Broome injury, Auburn's big man frontrunner for National Player of the Year, we got a little bit of a shakeup in my top 10 teams in college basketball future odds market as well. So we'll dive into that. Then we'll give out our favorite plays of the day. As always, any questions, comments, best bets that you guys have for us, let us know. You can go to twitch.tv/BetQL, or you can go to YouTube/Odyssey Sports as well. And if you miss any part of the show over the next 30 minutes, we got you covered with the Send It In podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. All right, let's get this thing started. Glasses in session here on a Monday. And we will start with our final game of Wild Card Weekend, Rams and Vikings, which should be a good one tonight. Obviously, the big storyline surrounding this game is with everything going on in Los Angeles. They had to move this game to Glendale, Arizona, home of the Cardinals. So after the Rams were a 1-point dog and they were getting a lot of money early in the week, with this game being moved and the Rams having to hop on a plane, obviously their week being disrupted by everything going on, this line is now back up to 2.5. I still think the Rams are the right side, though, in the game at the plus 2.5. I like them on the money line as well at plus 120. Minnesota Vikings went 14-3 this year in the regular season. They only lost to 2 teams. They lost to Detroit twice, and they lost to the Rams. And those 3 games were the only time all year that Minnesota gave up 30 or more points. So it's pretty clear that if you want to beat the Vikings, you're going to have to score. And I know this total is starting to drop a little bit. It was 48.5, 48. Now it's down to 47.5. If you're like me and you like the Rams, I think you got to like the over in a little bit in this game too. I think you got to like some points. Maybe look at a Rams team total over. The thing that I think the Rams understand when they go up against Minnesota, and I think some of the things that have correlated between the Rams and the Lions and why those are the 2 teams that have beaten Minnesota, is both Ben Johnson and Sean McVay understand that you have to run the ball against Minnesota. They have the second best run defense in the NFL, but they also are first in interceptions. So what happens a lot of the time is these teams can't get anything going on the ground game. They abandon it, and then they throw the ball all over the place, and that plays right in the hands of Brian Flores because of all the different blitz packages and disguises he has on defense, and it creates a lot of turnovers. When the Rams beat Minnesota back in Week 8 on that Thursday night game, Kyren Williams had 23 carries for 97 yards. So didn't have like the greatest of games, but the Rams stuck with it. They stuck with the run. They stayed balanced, and that's the key. And I think they do that tonight. So Sean McVay understands that even if they're not able to gash Minnesota for chunk plays, you still have to be able to run the football. You can't get one-dimensional against Minnesota. So I like the Rams in this game. I think it's a bad matchup for the Vikings, and I know you don't want to ever overreact to just one game, especially when we have an entire season to look at. But that Sunday night game against Detroit was by far Sam Darnold's biggest game in his NFL career, right? That was essentially a playoff game. Winner of that game got a 1 seed, got a bye week, so that was a playoff game. And Darnold played arguably his worst game all year. He missed way too many open throws. He had tons of receivers open. He wasn't reading the defense clearly. He was off target a bunch of the game. So that was a little bit telling for me, right? A lot of us, I think, don't want to fully buy into Minnesota because even though Sam Darnold's having a great year, like it's still Sam Darnold, and we've seen so much of him, obviously, with the Jets, and we've seen him look really bad in the league. And I think that game against the Lions kind of reaffirmed, certainly my opinion and probably other people's, of this is why we just can't get there with Minnesota. Now that these games are, one and done, there's a lot on the line. Minnesota's going to need Sam Darnold to play like he has been all regular season. And that performance against the Lions, I did not like what I saw. So I like the Rams in this game, plus 2.5. Like them on the money line as well. Think they get the job done against the Vikings. I also think this line's too much of an overreaction for this game going from LA to Phoenix, right? I mean, SoFi is one of the worst home field advantages in the NFL. I think we all know this, like Lambeau, Buffalo. These are places where you get 2.5, 3 points of value. Those are great home field advantages. But for SoFi, it's not great. So for this line to jump like 2 points, I don't really agree with that. I think that's too much of an overreaction. So think you're getting good value with the Rams. Don't think we see a 3. Like them at 2.5. Like them on the money line as well. Couple of props that I would keep my eye on. Kyren Williams over 20.5 rush attempts. I like this one quite a bit. 3 of his final 4 games in the regular season, he went over this number when they played Minnesota. Earlier in the regular season, he went over this number as well. And I was just talking about earlier, Sean McVay understands that you have to continue to run the ball against Minnesota. I think they do that. I like over 20.5 rush attempts for Kyren Williams. Also like over 2.5 rushing yards for Puka Nacua. Look, it's the playoffs. You got to find a way to get the ball in your best player's hands. McVay usually is good for like 1 or 2 wide receiver jet sweeps a game, and I think we're going to see that tonight. Puka's going to be on the receiving end, so I like over 2.5 rushing yards there for Puka. And then anytime touchdown, give me TJ Hawkinson, the Vikings tight end, plus 210. I think he finds the end zone tonight. I like that price. So much attention, obviously, on Jefferson, Addison. I think that could free up Hawkinson in the middle of the field, so we'll take him anytime touchdown as well at plus 210. All right, it's a Monday. Let's look at the games that I would bet right now here on Send It In. We have 3 of the divisional matchups set, and then we obviously have the national championship game in college football, which we'll get to here in a little bit. Let's start with this Texans and Chiefs matchup, though. However, we got Kansas City favored by 8 with the total of 42. The bet that I'm looking at in this game is the Houston Texans in the first half at plus 5.5 against Kansas City. Keep in mind that the Chiefs starters have not played since Christmas when they played the Steelers, right? I mean, that's a long time to sit for Kelsey and Mahomes and Chris Jones and all these different veterans that obviously need the rest if they're trying to go for the three-peat, but that's a long layoff. And you got a Texans team that is coming off a nice win against the Chargers. Their defense is very confident. And I think a lot of people just forget that the Texans were up in the second half of that game against Kansas City couple weeks ago, and then the Tank Dell injury happens, and we all saw the emotion that CJ Stroud had on his face, and the Texans could just never quite recover from that. But 8's a lot of points, and I think in the first half, attacking Houston and fading Kansas City when they've had a long layoff, I think is a good angle, so I like the Texans in the first half at plus 5.5. Some props that I like in this game, Travis Kelce over 52.5 receiving yards. It's the playoffs. This is what they wait all year for, to kind of unleash Kelsey, so I like that angle. Also like CJ Stroud over rushing yards at 14.5. He had 6 carries for 42 yards against the Chargers. And again, outside of Nico Collins, the Texans don't really have many weapons, so Stroud might have to use his legs. I like over his rushing yards, and I like John Mechie over his receiving yards, because outside of Nico Collins, when Stroud does throw the ball, somebody else has to make plays. I think Mechie is probably that guy. I like the number at 23.5 receiving yards, so I would go over there for John Mechie. Then we have the Commanders and the Lions. This should be a fun game. Lions opened up at 10.5-point favorites. Quickly, the Commanders took a bunch of money. Now the Lions are down to 8.5. The total in this game is 55.5. I tend to like the Commanders plus the points in this game. I think the Lions win, but I just think it's too many guys. Jaden Daniels is a superstar. And Washington just finds ways to win games, and they find ways to hang around. I liked Tampa a lot last night. I thought the regression would come for Washington. I thought we were kind of overvaluing them a little bit because they were on a 5-game win streak, and 4 of their last games had come essentially in the last 10 seconds. But they just keep finding ways to win games. They keep finding ways to hang around. And with Jaden Daniels, their quarterback, they always feel like they have a chance. And against that Lions defense that we know is banged up, and especially on that defensive line, I think Washington's going to be able to run the football. That's one of the things that impressed me most about that Commanders win last night, is that they essentially didn't have any run game at all. Tampa held them to 2.8 yards per carry, and they were able to make them one-dimensional. And still, with a rookie quarterback on the road in his first career playoff game, they were able to get the win. So that was a really impressive performance by Jaden and Washington. But they should have some success on the ground against Detroit running the football, which is why a lot of the props that I like in that game is based on Washington running, because I think that's the game plan. Their best defense in this game is going to be their offense. They have to keep Detroit's offense off the field, and they got to possess the ball and chew clock. So I'm looking at Jaden Daniels over 9.5 rush attempts. I think he's going to have double-digit rush attempts. They're really going to use his legs. I also like Brian Robinson over 36.5 rushing yards as well, even though Eckler did share some carries with him. And again, they didn't have a lot of success on the ground against Vita Vea and Tampa. I think they could against Detroit. So I'll go over 36.5 rushing yards for Brian Robinson. And then give me Amon-Ra St. Brown over 6.5 receptions. I think that number's too low. This is the playoffs. Amon-Ra's kind of been hit or miss in some of these games, but in a game which should be higher scoring, I think they're going to feature Amon-Ra quite a bit. So I like that number over 6.5 as well. Then the game of the weekend in the NFL in the divisional round is going to be Ravens and Bills. Ravens actually took some money this morning, and they are now the favorites on the road in Buffalo, minus 120 with the total of 51.5. And I like the Ravens in this game. Watching Buffalo and Denver yesterday, I think the thing that Buffalo did really well was running the ball on first down. There were so many times in that game yesterday where on first down they ran for 5, 6, 7 yards, and they were consistently in 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5. And when you get Josh Allen in manageable 2nd and 3rd down situations, you have no chance because the whole playbook is open. You don't know whether the run's coming, the pass is going. If they get it in 4th and 1, he's just going to QB sneak it and get the first down. So Denver's inability to stop the run yesterday on first down when they knew that they were going to run the football was, to me, the story of that game. Well, the problem is the Ravens have the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL. So the Bills probably aren't going to be able to have the success, especially on first down against Denver, that they will against Baltimore. So I think that's going to be a big part of the game. And guys, the Ravens game plan against Pittsburgh was a masterpiece. That is what I have been waiting for like 6 years. A run-heavy game plan, limit the pass, and just run. And when the Ravens do that, I mean, they're unbeatable. They're the best team in the NFL. I can't tell you the last time the Ravens have played the Steelers and haven't had a single turnover in a game, and I think that speaks to their game plan and kind of their message and what they were trying to accomplish against Pittsburgh, and that was just run the ball, dominate the line of scrimmage, and I think that's what they're going to look to do against Buffalo. The Ravens match up well, too, with the Bills. You know, the Bills struggle against physical teams that want to run the football, and that's obviously what the Ravens are all about. So I know the Ravens beat Buffalo pretty bad in Week 4, 35-10. Already Bills players at the podium after yesterday's games were talking about how they remember that game, and, you know, they'll certainly be out for revenge, and I do not expect this game to be as lopsided as that one was. But for these two teams to be as good as they are, for Buffalo to be at home, and for the Ravens to be favorites in this game, I think is telling you a lot. Ravens, I think, match up well with Buffalo. I think they're the better team. I think they take care of business in that game. Favorite prop of the weekend is going to be Josh Allen over rushing attempts, 8.5 at plus 110. The Bills love running Josh Allen in big games. They love it. Every time they play Kansas City, I would consider that a big game, right? 4 of the 5 times that he has played the Chiefs, Josh Allen has gone for 10 or more rushing attempts. Now, he's only played the Ravens 1 time in the postseason, so he obviously hasn't faced the Chiefs as many times as he has the Ravens. But, I mean, this is a massive game, right? The Bills know if they want to have any chance against Baltimore, especially on the ground with the Ravens having the number 1 run defense, they got to find a way to run Josh Allen. So I love over 8.5 rush attempts for Josh. And then finally, national championship game, Ohio State and Notre Dame. Early thoughts on this game. I like Ohio State minus the 8.5. If you've watched the show, you know we've been on Notre Dame. We had a future on them to win the Natty at 10-1. We thought it would be Texas and Notre Dame in the national championship. So no surprise to me that the Irish are in this spot, but Ohio State's just a brutal matchup for them. How telling is it that Penn State, there wasn't a single reception from a Penn State receiver in that game against Notre Dame, and yet the Irish needed a field goal in the final 10 seconds to win that game. So they go from playing a team that didn't have any catches from their wide receivers to now playing against the team with the best wide receiver room in college football. I think that's going to be tough. And as great as Ohio State's offense has been throughout the playoff, their defense has been really good too. I think Notre Dame's going to have a tough time stopping that Ohio State offense, and this is by far the best offense that Notre Dame has seen all year. Probably the 2 best offenses they've seen are Louisville and USC. They gave up 24 points at home to Louisville. They gave up 35 on the road to USC. Now they got to play Ohio State off of a bad performance against Texas where Jeremiah Smith only had 1 reception. I like Ohio State minus 8.5 against Notre Dame. All right, a promo now from our friends at BetMGM. And do you think that you know playoff football? Well, we can prove it. BetMGM's free-to-play game. For each round of the big game playoffs, you'll have the opportunity to answer 3 historical playoff football questions. You answer all 3 correctly, you'll win a share of $1 million in bonus bets. First entry period, 3 questions about wild card games, $250,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. The second entry period, 3 questions about divisional games, $250,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. Third entry period, 3 questions about conference championship games, $500,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. And how does it work? You access the $1 Million Playoff Football Challenge promotion at BetMGM.com or the BetMGM app. Answer 3 questions per round during the big game playoffs. You answer all 3 questions correctly, you win a share of bonus bets for that playoff round. All right, let's check in with Lucy Burdge. It's a Monday. Go to Model Making Money here on Send It In. Man, Lucy, a lot to get to. The New England Patriots have a new coach, Mike Vrabel. Want to get your thoughts on that here in a little bit. We'll obviously talk about some of the games we got in the NFL playoffs. But, Lucy, what is the BetQL model like as their 5-star play for tonight?
Yes, hello, PJ. There's a lot to get to, but the 5-star play for tonight is in Rams Vikings. It is the under 47.5 for the score of this one. The Rams have hit the under in 3 of their last 4 games, and they are only averaging 21 points scored per game. The Vikings have hit the under in 2 of their last 4. So the BetQL model loves the under for tonight, 47.5 as a 5-star play.
All right, very good. Lucy, let's stick with that game, Rams and Vikings. Any plays for you in that one?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Vikings. I am sorry to the Ramily, but I am taking the Vikings -2.5. They have covered in 4 of their last 5. All of those as the favorite. The final one, they were not favorite and they did not cover, but such is life. And the last 3 games Stafford that he has played in, Stafford has been held to under 200 passing yards. And Cooper Kupp, a little quiet lately. He caught only 4 passes for 53 yards in that time span as well. So I think the Vikings can win this one and cover. And if you happen to check out the BetQL staff picks on odyssey.com/BetQL. We today have long shots, and my long shot for this game is the correct score. Vikings to win 31-27. This is plus 20,000 at BetMGM. You can get this. This is enticing because this covers everything because they cover the spread. If this is the case, 31-27, and the Vikings are averaging 4 more points scored per game than the Rams, so kind of checks out for this to be, perhaps the final score if you're willing to take a chance. So I do like the Vikings tonight -2.5.
Love that. Little pizza money on the correct score, Lucy. Try to hit big. I think that's a great look. 31-27 Vikings. Let's look at some of the other NFL playoff matches that we have. We have 3 of the divisional matchups all ready to go, including 2 games featuring some large spreads. We have the Texans as 8-point dogs against the Chiefs, and the Commanders 8.5-point underdogs against the Lions. So, Lucy, if you had your choice and you could only bet one of those underdogs against the spread, would you take the Texans or the Commanders?
Yeah, so PJ, these spreads being a little bit bigger have me all befuddled. I want to take the Lions because I want them to blow out the Commanders, so I'm going to stick with that. Of these 2, I would rather take Texans +8. However, I do, as of right now, early lean is on the Chiefs and the Lions, but of these 2, I would take Texans +8 because I think the Lions will blow out the Commanders, of course, but I think the Texans have a better chance to cover this as the Chiefs. Sometimes, some of the games this season they have eked out and they have just won some games, and maybe the Texans show up. So I would take Texans +8 of these 2.
All right, I like it. What about Ravens and Bills, Lucy? This is going to be the game of the weekend. A lot of people excited for this one. We got the 2 MVP candidates, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Ravens are now the favorites in this game against Buffalo. Do you agree with that? Do you think the Ravens are going to win this game?
So it is important to remember, PJ, as I say this, that I did have Ravens -10 this past week. But I'm going to take the Bills to win this game, and I am sorry, but I have the Bills in the Super Bowl, so it would be tough for me to not take them to win this game. They also were 9-0 at home this season, undefeated, and I think that continues, and they win this game. But this is the game of the playoffs so far, PJ. This is going to be an incredible game, and I think it will come down to each team's defense being very important, and I think the Bills will win out in that regard and in regards to the game itself. So I think the Bills win this game, but it's great for the Ravens to have gotten this far, but I'm taking the Bills.
It's going to be a good game. I can't wait to watch what happens. Speaking of defense, Lucy, your team has a new head coach, Mike Vrabel, who knows a thing or two about defense. Your reaction, you've probably figured this was going to happen when they got rid of Gerard Mayo. It made all the sense in the world that Vrabel would be the head coach. But now that it has officially happened, what is your reaction to Mike Vrabel being the new coach of the Patriots?
Yeah, so this is great, PJ. Also, Jerry Jones, shout out to him for trying to ruin the moment for Robert Kraft and for Mike Vrabel. But however, he could not, because this is the guy. This is the guy the Patriots should have hired, and I think they kind of wanted to, instead of Gerard Mayo. But they had already promised Gerard Mayo that he would have the job, so they did not. But now they have their guy. And it feels like a brand new day, PJ, in Patriots Nation, because the Patriots are back. This is what it feels like, is okay. The reins have been controlled once again, but someone is in control of this spiraling ship, out of control. So I think he is going to come in and he is going to have more, there will be more structure. They will, I think the big thing too is that he has experience, and Gerard Mayo was put, as Robert Kraft said, and is true, was put in a very difficult position, being a head coach who had never been a head coach before. So I think this will be better. And I think the Patriots now have a lot more pieces in place. First, head coach is a fantastic thing to have in place, a good one, and a quarterback now, because you start the season starting Drake May. So I think that's huge. And I think that that's what Gerard Mayo wanted to do. Another case where he was put in a bad position. So I think now with a head coach who knows the system, he is a Patriots Hall of Famer, but also he was coach of the year. He has had success with the Titans, taking them to the playoffs. So he knows what it takes and what it takes in this system to have success, winning Super Bowls with the Patriots. So I think this is a perfect match and was expected, but still feels really good to now have it official and have him gotten through his introductory press conference, and he looks great and he sounds great. And I think that it feels like it's going to be a great year. New year, new Patriots is what it feels like.
They're going to be an interesting team for next season, Lucy. There's no doubt about it. They feel like they have their quarterback in Drake May and now the head coach in Mike Vrabel. So going to be an interesting year for the Pats coming up in 2025. Lucy Burdge joining us here on Send It In. Lucy, always a pleasure. Great to have you on the show. We'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, PJ. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. For those people who want to continue to bet but don't have the time to research each individual game, you need to download the BetQL app. It ranks each game on a 1 to 5 star scale based on its unbeatable analysis from spreads and over-unders to player props. Stay up to date and bet confidently with BetQL's help. All right, let's talk some college hoops here on a Monday as I go through my top 10 teams in college basketball. And Auburn's been number one for essentially the whole time that we've done this for college basketball. But that Janai Broome injury is a big deal. So now the Duke Blue Devils take over at number one. They are plus 600 to win the national championship. Duke is 7th in offense, according to Ken Palm. They're 2nd in defense. They are the most complete team in college basketball. Cooper Flagg just had 42 against Pittsburgh on Saturday. So these freshmen are going to continue to get better. Their defense is awesome. They've played a difficult non-conference schedule to challenge them. They're going to win the ACC. They're going to be a 1 seed, and they're probably going to be the favorites heading in to March Madness. So I like Duke. They're my number one team in the country. Second is going to be Iowa State at 13-1. And we've been talking about the Cyclones. Outside of Duke, this is the only other team in the sport. Top 10 in both offense and defensive efficiency. What a great win on Saturday against Texas Tech. That was one of those stinky lines, right? Number 3 Iowa State on the road against unranked Texas Tech, and they're 1.5, 2.5 point dogs in that game, but they find a way to win it in overtime. I love their guard play. And the difference with Iowa State this year, we knew their defense would be good. They can really score. They can shoot the three, and they're going to be a tough out. That's a good team, my number 2 team in college basketball as of now. Florida Gators, I've been talking about this team. I really like them. They're 13-1 to win the national championship. Not a better three-headed monster at guard than Florida with Clayton, Elijah Martin, and Will Richard. They're really good athletic bigs. They can score, man. It's all going to be about the defensive end for the Gators, but 13-1 to win the national championship. Bama, they're my number 4 team. They're 15-1 to win the national championship. Florida and Alabama are kind of the same teams. Lethal offensive teams. They play at a fast pace, but whether or not these teams win a national championship is all going to come down to the defensive end of the floor. I think Florida's a little bit better than Bama at this point, but Bama's starting to play good. They're 3-0 in SEC play, had a nice road win at Texas A&M, so I like the Tide. 15-1 is my number 4 team. I'll put Tennessee as my number 5 team. They're 13-1 to win the national championship. I would never place a future on Tennessee, even though I think they're a top 5 team. Their offense is just way too inconsistent for me. Rick Barnes' teams, it's the same story every single year. Excellent defensive team. Are you going to get enough offense for him, though, in March? I don't think you are. So Tennessee, Good team. Would never bet them at 13-1. Then I'll put Auburn at number 6, and they're plus 650 right now to win the national championship. Please do not bet Auburn at plus 650 right now to win the national championship, especially with how difficult the SEC is. And with Janai Broome out indefinitely, he's going to come back for, the stretch run and into March Madness. So Auburn should be at full strength by the time we get to March. But with him out, and with how difficult the SEC is, there's a chance that Auburn could be like a 3 seed or a 4 seed, and that's going to be really tough for those teams that are in their region in March Madness. So Auburn's a really good team, but look, when you're missing the national frontrunner, the frontrunner for National Player of the Year, that's a really tough thing to overcome. We saw Auburn against South Carolina on Saturday when he got hurt, and in the second half, South Carolina nearly won that game. So Auburn's going to have to find out for the time being how to survive without Janai Broome, hopefully get him back for a March Madness, have him fully healthy and ready to go. But as of now, I'll put Auburn at number 6. Houston's going to be number 7 for me. They're 11-1 to win the national championship. I wouldn't place a future on Houston either. It feels like a lesser version of the team that we've seen the last couple of years. Whenever you're dealing with the Kelvin Sampson Houston team, they're always going to be good on defense. This team is no different. They're number 1 according to Ken Pom, but they're not as good offensively as they've been the last couple of years. Last couple of years, they've had a Jamal Shed. They've had a Marcus Sasser. They've had a Quentin Grimes. They've had these great guards. They don't really have that this year. So that's why I'm not a believer in Houston at 11-1 to win the national championship. Then we got Illinois. They're the number 8 team for me. They're 30-1 to win the national championship. Tough loss for the Illini on Saturday as big favorites at home to USC. But man, can they score? And their defense is very good this year, which is why I like Illinois. And they got one of the best point guards in the country as well. So Illini for me at number 8. I'll put Kansas at number 9. Jayhawks are starting to play a lot better. After a couple of nice wins in the non-conference, they started to play some true road games against Creighton and Missouri and look terrible. But now that they've entered Big 12 play, they've gone on the road against UCF, blew them out, won at Cincinnati over the weekend. So Kansas is getting better and better on the road. Top 5 defense. Need to see some more consistency out of them, though, on the offensive end. And then Michigan will come in for me at number 10. Dusty May, who came over from FAU's done a terrific job in his first year in Ann Arbor. And this Michigan team is starting to resemble kind of that FAU team that we saw make it to the Final Four. They're really solid on both ends, and they have a star in Danny Wolf. So Michigan's a really good team. 30-1, I think, is an interesting price. Going to be fun to see who wins the Big Ten between the Illini and Michigan, but I'll have Michigan as my number 10 team right now in college basketball. So once again, the top 10, Duke, Iowa State, Florida, 1, 2, 3, Bama, Tennessee, Auburn at 6. They dropped because of Janai Broome's injury. Houston, Illinois, and Kansas 7, 8, 9, and then Michigan rounds out the top 10 here on Send It In. All right, a couple minutes left. Let's get into our favorite plays of the day. And before I give out my prop block, B Mills, I see your question in the chat. Got a couple of plays that you like tonight. Both quarterbacks to have 15 or more passing yards each quarter, minus 135. You also like Puka over 2.5 rushing yards as well. I talked about the Puka over rushing yards, B Mills, so I love that look. I think that's a really good price, especially at even money. Both quarterbacks to have 15 or more passing yards in each quarter, I think it's a good bet too. I think both Darnold and Stafford are certainly going to be slinging it tonight. And it's not really too much to ask at 15 plus yards. There's a reason why it's juiced at minus 135, but that feels like a safe play for me. I really do like Puka over rushing yards though. And I also really like Kyron Williams over rushing attempts at 20.5. He's gone over this number 3 of his final 4 games of the regular season. He went over this number when they played Minnesota earlier in the year. And if you want to beat the Vikings, you have to stay committed to the ground game. I think the Rams do that tonight. I'll go over rushing attempts for Kyron Williams. I'll take the Rams plus 2.5 against the Vikings, my dog of the day. They were one of 2 teams, them and the Lions, to beat the Vikings in the regular season. I think it's a bad matchup for Minnesota. I honestly just think the Rams are the better team. I'll take LA plus 2.5. And then finally, my best bet is going to be Josh Allen over rushing attempts, over 8.5 plus 110 against the Ravens. Lock that in now earlier in the week because I don't think this will be plus money by the time the game kicks off. The Bills love running Josh in these big games. And when you're going up against the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL in Baltimore, probably not going to lean explicitly on James Cook. You got to find other ways to run the ball. I think they lean on Allen. I like over 8.5 rushing attempts. Once again, Kyron Williams over 20.5 rush attempts, my prop block. Rams plus 2.5 is going to be my dog of the day, and Josh Allen over 8.5 rush attempts at plus 110 is going to be my best bet. Thanks again to Lucy Burdge for joining us on the show today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy Rams and Vikings, and we will see you tomorrow.